Hi, this is Adam Stopsky from Briefly, and I'm here with Matt Kugizaki from Inland County's Legal Services for our video series on key legal issues. So today we're going to talk about small businesses and just an overview, a really quick overview of critical legal issues for small businesses. So Matt, take it away. What are the sort of key legal issues that people starting or owning a small business need to be thinking about?
Absolutely, Adam. The first thing I will say, there are a lot of legal issues, and I want to recognize that small business owners, they go through a lot of the same exact legal issues as some of the largest businesses out there. So by us creating a list today, it's by no means meant to suggest these are the only four things you need to know. But having said that, there are kind of some four core issues that we want to talk about today that every small business owner should think about. And those issues are entity selection, contracts, employment, and trademarks.
All right, let's take them one by one. So entity selection, that sounds very technical. What is that?
Yeah, I love starting with entity selection because it really is kind of like the foundation. It's the beginning. Your entity, although it's technical, is just how are you operating as a business? In California and in every state, there are different types of structures. You could be a sole proprietor, you could be a limited liability company or an LLC, you could be a corporation or a range of different types of corporate entities that you choose from. Each of those options have pros and cons. A lot of them relate to the costs of operation, the compliance requirements associated with certain types of entity, and the limitations of personal liabilities and the protections that certain entities provide. First, we have a sole proprietor. That's the default kind of entity. And in a lot, it really is no entity. If you're starting to sell t-shirts online or you provide a service, you're a business owner in its early phases, and you haven't registered anything with the state, you're operating as a sole proprietor. And that's great in a lot of ways. You have a lot of flexibility. You can operate your business. You build your website. You don't have to send forms and information to the state government. You obviously still have to pay taxes, but there is a lot more flexibility there. The challenge is, or the downside is, you're not protected from personnel liability. And what that means is that if you're operating as a sole proprietor and someone sues you, unless you happen to have an insurance policy that may cover what you're doing, you're at a high risk that that person's going to be able to take your personal assets or your non-business assets. So they may be able to go after your bank account, your car, your house, other things that you have. In contrast, a lot of people want to be an LLC, a limited liability company. That limited often refers to the fact that your personal liability is limited here. You've chosen to have a business identity. And with that, in general, and there are certainly exceptions, and you have to make sure you comply with all of these laws, but you're generally protected. So then if someone sues you as a business of something that your business did, they'll go after the business assets. But in general, your personal assets are more protected in that circumstance. The downside, I mean, that sounds great, right? Like the downside is there are certain compliance requirements. You have to submit certain forms to the federal government and the state government. You have to respond to inquiries from them. You have to have a registered agent for service of process. You have to pay a fee. You have to do all of these things. And you know, there's monitoring other compliance that doesn't exist if you're operating as a sole proprietor.
Okay, great. All right, so that's a very quick overview of entity selection. What's next?
I would go with contracts just because it's so fundamental. And it's also something that I think every business owner should at least think about from the very beginning, even before they start operations.
All right, so what do business owners need to know about contracts? You said it's a huge area. What are the kind of basics?
I think a few of the basics are one, you can enter into a contract verbally or on paper. I think a lot of people think if it's not on paper, that's not a contract. So as a business owner, if you're saying you're going to do something and people are relying on that, maybe it's a potential business partner, maybe it's someone who might be doing marketing, but you suggest to them that, yeah, we're in agreement, but we didn't write anything down. That could be a valid contract. So the takeaway is you just want to be careful with how you're outwardly expressing yourself to people you may want to contract with. The second thing, which is related, I'll just go into saying you want to make sure things are, in general, it's always best practice to have things in writing, especially things that are core to your business.
So I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't need a contract. I trust that person. They'll just get it done. What is your response to that?
There's a couple responses I'd have. One, a lot of times you won't end up needing the contract in the event that, it's there for dispute, right? A lot of times the trust you have in someone works out well, but a lot of times it doesn't. And in some instances, it's actually when you want to have the contract the most. If it's a friend or a family member, someone that you trust a lot and you have a relationship, it's often best just to put down in writing what is on your mind, what is on their mind, to make sure that although you trust them, you may have a miscommunication that could go and harm that relationship. So you really still want to do that. A contract isn't about trust necessarily. It's more about making sure communication and understanding is clear.
Right. I like that. That's a really good way of expressing it. Because we can all remember a time when we've like misremember, we remember things differently from a conversation we had. I think it happens all the time. So writing it down.
How it happens. It happens absolutely all the time, especially I'd say for business owners who have so many things that they're thinking about. Sometimes the last thing they're thinking about is documenting. Like I completely understand documenting every conversation. And I'm not saying absolutely everything you need that you're doing needs to be in writing, but important things like I'm developing a website for my business. There are certain things, if you're working with a website developer, you'll want to make sure that are done in a way that you want it done, in a way, certain timing things. Because if your website is developed too late, let's say that you need the website done in June so you can start operations in August and you have this big plan, but maybe the developer didn't remember that. Maybe they just thought summer and they extended that to September. And then you're later in a situation where they're not providing the service that, you wanted or needed by a certain time. But if you had a contract that said, this will be done by June 1st, this is when the payment will be made, this is exactly what it'll look like, it just helps everyone. In a lot of ways, it's meant to organize your business.
Okay. So those are quick overviews of formation, entity selection, and contracts. What is next?
I think we'll go to employment law. And employment law, an employment agreement or independent contractor agreement is a form of a contract that you may have. But more fundamentally, employment law is something that I think every business owner will consider at some time. And I recognize from the start that not all businesses and many small businesses have no employees in the beginning. Before you start making profit, before you start selling your product or expanding, it may all be on you. And it may be something you're not even thinking about right now, but many business owners that we work with want to expand at some point. And when you're really thinking about expanding, and that could mean bringing on an intern, a volunteer, a student, an employee, an independent contractor, a temp worker, any type of person that's helping you run your business, then this is when employment law comes into play.
What are the key areas that people need to understand about employment law?
I think some of the key areas are the difference between an employee or an independent contractor or other type of, people working for you. The big one is employee versus independent contractor. An employee means that if you bring on someone as an employee, that means that you have a lot of control over them. You can dictate how they do their work. That's kind of like a traditional way that people get to grow their business. And it's great in a lot of ways, but that if someone's an employee, then there are what we call wage and hour laws and other types of employment regulations that you make sure that you have to comply with. And that would include making sure you provide your employee breaks, a meal period, leave, or health leave, minimum wage requirements. All of these things relate to if you're bringing on someone as an employee versus an independent contractor. An independent contractor is someone that you bring on that they kind of have their own business and they're offering a specific service for you. And a lot of business owners are like, great, because in the independent contractor context, you don't have to worry about all of those other laws. You don't have to worry about giving an independent contractor a break, for example, because they're their own independent worker and they can take their break when they want to take their break. But it's nice for you for record keeping because you don't have to even think about that.
So classifying your employees as whether they're actual employees or independent contractors.
Absolutely. And I should add that you are not the decision necessarily 100% on how to classify employees. California and the federal government actually have a lot of requirements on who can be an employee based on the type of business you have, what they do, the level of control you have over them, and all of these other factors. So it's something to, You can't just say like, oh, we're going to be independent contractors and we're all going to agree to that. That might work, but it may certainly not as well.
Okay. All right, great. So employment law is obviously a very complicated, there's a lot going on, but in the interest of time, let's move on to our fourth and final area. What is that, Matt?
It's trademark. And so what a trademark essentially is, it's a legal designation that protects your brand. So we're thinking about your business name, your logo, like a slogan that you may use that kind of identifies your business. And there are two things to think about with trademark law. One, you're spending a lot of time on your business name. You're marketing it out to the community. You want to control like how you frame your brand. You're really intentional about this. So what you don't want to happen after you are very successful is for another business to pop up using all of the work that you did. So this is referred to as protecting your trademark. And you can register your trademark with the US and Patent Trademark Office. You can also gain trademark protections through other means. But so one aspect of this is, protecting yourself with trademark law against other people. The other, I think, equally critical aspect is making sure that you're not accidentally starting a business infringing or violating or using someone else's other name. And it's not as simple as, oh, I didn't see that this name existed, or maybe that name existed, I'm using a different term. You would want to check before you start, operating your business and investing hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars, whatever you are in your name, to make sure that someone else hasn't registered that trademark, someone else isn't using that name, either online or in a store near you, or, using in the same type of industry. There's a lot of factors that go into whether, like, who owns which name, depending on when it was used, how was it used, etc. But suffice to say, you're going to want to think about this because it could be a very costly mistake if you're not thinking about this early on in your business.
So for a trademark, you want to use the trademark laws to protect your own brand, your own identity as a business, but also make sure you're not infringing someone else's.
Perfectly said. Exactly.
Great. All right. Well, that is an amazing summary of small business law in about 10 minutes. So we've covered entity selection and formation, so how you actually form your business and what kind of business you have. Contracts, how you come to agreements, how you bind your business or have other people bind themselves to you in various ways. Employment, how you manage the people who are working for your business. And trademark, how you protect your business's name and brand. Did I summarize that well in about 30 seconds?
That's perfect.
Great. All right, Matt, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.